2 new Loki variants have just arrived on Marvel Future Fight. But which of them is the best variant? That's just one of the questions we'll be looking at today, along with an overall analysis of how strong Loki is exactly with this new uniform. Yes, I did buy both of these new uniforms because I am an MCU shill. We're going to be looking at how both of these dashing gods of mischief perform and seeing how they stack up against other characters as per the usual. So my Loki's build right now is a little bit incomplete. His crit damage is almost capped out, which is nice. However, his crit rate is a little bit lacking. It's a little bit off of that 75%. And the reason I'm doing that is because I am kind of unsure about how I want to build this character. Do I want to give him a rage? Do I want to give him an energy? I don't actually know, so I'm kind of just leaving myself a little flexible so I can adapt to it later. As we look at the build that Loki has here, I think it's important to mention that nothing about his typing changes between these two uniforms. He is a universal, male, alien, supervillain on both uniforms. As you can see here, I'm kind of like showing the two uniforms just to kind of prove my point. But yeah, everything else about the build is generally what you would expect. I gave him quite a few pieces of Uru, 3 Odin's Blessing, so it's not really cheaping out on him. But yeah, I'm still kind of flexible because there's a lot of open slots. No type enhancement here. We have a Power of Angry Hulk ISO 8 set, stage 6. Could be better. And we also have a crit damage 140 proc for now, just to help me kind of cap out that crit damage. And as you might have seen earlier, we're working with a legendary uniform. And there is a 5% attack bonus because it is a synergy uniform. I'm just showing you the options here for anyone who didn't know already. They're nice options, I would say. I think it's just nice because I own like 3 of these uniforms. Unfortunately, I don't own the 4th and the 5th uniform. However, I will still be working on getting it mythic. And you know, maybe one day I'll buy the Spider-Gwen uniform. Who knows? Alright, so with that out of the way, let's take these two Lokis into some content to see which of them is better and to see how well they stack up against the current characters in the meta. So first, I decided to take them to ABX with their own leadership with Mystique and Valkyrie as support, and I'm actually pretty happy with the power level of these uniforms because I was able to take them up to stage 5 and keep the tests relatively like interesting. It didn't take too long for them. So off the bat, both of these uniforms are already of a pretty high power level. I just want to get it out of the way. Also, I'm kind of only going to be testing these two uniforms in PvE content because I did try to record some content for PvP, and I was just not happy with how he performed in PvP, both of these uniforms actually, so I just decided to not cover it. That's not to say he won't be good in PvP, but I'm just not ready to like invest in Loki enough that he gets good in PvP. I'm mainly going to be using him in PvE anyway, because for PvP I already have enough characters. So yeah, as you can see, both of these characters are performing very similarly with this World Boss Legend run against Knull. The TVA uniform might be a little bit faster at this rate because you can see it's kind of ahead, but it's really still pretty close. The President Loki uniform is not that far behind. And I think this is interesting because, when you looked at the patch notes yesterday when they dropped, the President Loki uniform looked like it would be just straight up better than this TVA Loki uniform. And the fact that the TVA Loki uniform is performing better, if it's just ever so slightly, that's kind of interesting and kind of, harkens to the fact that, not everything about a uniform can kind of be seen in the patch notes and in the text. You kind of just have to take a uniform in and test it to find out. But yeah, as you can see, this TVA Loki uniform will get the run done a few seconds faster than the President Loki uniform. And mind you, I did multiple runs with both of these uniforms in World Boss Legend, and it was pretty consistent. The TVA uniform is just consistently better than the President Loki uniform, but again, not by much. It's better by like a couple of seconds, maybe 10 seconds max. So I guess the conclusion here is that the TVA Loki uniform is better than the President Loki uniform when it comes to World Boss Legend. But what about for ABX? And what a coincidence it is as well that these Loki uniforms are released on Universal Villain ABX Day. So this is a Silence Day. This is Silence Month. So Universal Villain Silence. That's the criteria that we're doing here. And we're taking, TVA Loki, President Loki into ABX with Thanos lead, Proxima support. The usual. Now, the thing you have to note, the difference between TVA and President Loki over here is that President Loki has silence on his 4th skill, while TVA Loki only has silence on his tier 3 skill. You should understand also that President Loki also has the silence on the tier 3 skill, so you'd think it's just more consistent to get the silence off with President Loki than TVA Loki. But I'm telling you, this run is kind of interesting and I don't know. It's interesting in a way because you might think straight up that President Loki would just be better, given that he can more consistently silence the beast, whereas TVA Loki would have to save his tier 3 skill for to silence the beast, which is what I did for the TVA Loki run. I tried to save the tier 3 skill as much as I could in order to get it right when the beast is about to roar. So that means that I got more tier 3 skills off using President Loki in this ABX run. I will say though that I do think that Loki will find a place in the ABX meta. I mean, considering that Captain Marvel was able to find some role in the Universal Villain ABX meta, I think Loki may have a role to play as well. He does have Burn on his kit, which is kind of the role that Captain Marvel played in Universal Villain teams. Just apply Burn so that the beast could cancel the roar. And I do think Loki hits just a lot harder than Captain Marvel does. So that's interesting. However, I think it's most interesting for ABX specifically that Loki has all 3 of the cancel stuff that you need. He has Silence, he has Paralysis, he has Burn, which means he'll be entirely self-sufficient for ABX. And considering he's, an 800 CCF tier 3, I think it just provides a really good option for players who just want to have a character that they can regularly use for ABX to invest in Loki, and he'll be able to do every Universal Villain day for them, every type of month, no matter what the roar cancel mechanic is. So that adds to the value of Loki. And this is with both uniforms, by the way. It's kind of nice that they didn't limit his ABX versatility to just one uniform, because both uniforms have, Silence, Paralysis, and Burn on all of them. That's pretty cool. Going back to the ABX run though, look at that. What a twist. Again, you'd think that the President Loki uniform would do better, given that it's more consistent to silence the roar. However, it's lagging behind the TVA Loki uniform's performance right now. So that's what I said was really interesting. And, I as well expected the President Loki uniform to perform so much better than the TVA Loki uniform, but this is what we have here. Now, I will say that doesn't necessarily mean that the President Loki uniform is that much worse than the TVA Loki uniform in terms of ABX performance. Again, these ABX runs are not perfect and are also kind of determined by the RNG of the damage procs. My takeaway from this is mainly that the silence on Loki's 4th skill on his President uniform is kind of negligible and will not necessarily affect how well he performs in ABX. I do also think that the TVA uniform is in the end a little bit better for ABX than the President uniform, but feel free to make your own conclusions based on the tests that I've done here. Additionally, I wanted to do another World Boss Legend test just to see how well Loki performs against his Universal Villain counterparts. So I took him up against Proxima and Supergiant to see how well he performs against them. Of course, they all have Mystique's leadership, which just increases their speed, and it also has a Valkyrie support. So this is what they're working with. They all have the same strikers as well, it's typically what you would expect. And considering the fact that Loki is stacking up to these native tier 2 characters, native tier 2 tier 3 character, native tier 2 transcended character, I think that in itself is very impressive, considering that native tier 2s have higher base stats than normal characters. Proxima and Supergiant are also kind of heralded as some of the best Universal villains in the game, so I figured if Loki could put up similar numbers or even better numbers than them, that would kind of highlight just how strong he is. And you know what? He's doing a great job. Right now, he's ahead. He's getting really close to getting Knull into that next phase. So I think definitively Loki's power level is pretty up there. At this rate, he'll be the first to get Knull into the next phase, and he does exactly that. Mind you, my build for Loki is rather similar to that of Proxima and Supergiant. I haven't updated too much. In fact, Proxima and Supergiant may have better builds considering that they have mythic uniforms, while my Loki's uniform is still at legendary. But yeah, Loki is the fastest among these 3 characters, and that kind of just highlights Loki's pretty damn strong. In order to kind of highlight the power level that I believe that Loki has, I'm showing this run that I did with him against stage 5 of Knull. With this team, it's got Proxima leadership, it's also got Valkyrie support, giving him, a lot of ignore dodge. And these are a lot of attack buffing strikers. And it should speak volumes, I think, that I'm confident enough to take Loki into stage 5 as his best clear. given that I haven't really done that for a character on this channel. Like, I can't recall taking a character to stage 5 when I showcased their best run against Knull. So that kind of just highlights, you know, I really believe in Loki's power level. Now let's talk about Loki's kit. And this is the first time I'm talking about synergy uniforms in a video on this channel, so kind of bear with me. I'm trying to make this as not messy as possible. You know, so I'm gonna try to discuss the differences between these two uniforms and, you know, highlight what exactly about it makes it strong. So there are a number of differences when it comes to these two uniforms. The second skill between the uniforms is pretty different. With President Loki, it gives him a mind control effect, paralysis, as well as invincibility. Whereas on the TVA uniform, there is no significant effect, rather it just has more hits and is a longer iframe. The third skill is pretty much the same between the two uniforms, giving him a 15% heal when he uses it, as well as immunity to all damage. Loki's fourth skill is also different between the two uniforms. With the President uniform, it gives him silence, mind control, paralysis, as well as 55% increase of all attacks for 7 seconds. Very minor differences from the TVA uniform, which only has paralysis on it, none of the mind control or silence shenanigans going on there, and a 50% increase of all attacks. However, this buff lasts for 8 seconds. The fifth skill between the two uniforms remains unchanged and gives a 50% damage proc for 2 attacks, as well as burn, paralysis, invincibility, and all defense down. There are big differences between the two uniforms as well when it comes to their 4-star passive. On the President Loki uniform, it gives him 30% increase of energy attack, and whenever he uses a Dominance of Spirit, or for simpler terms, mind control skill, he gains 50% all damage received reduction, as well as a 15% heal for 8 seconds. So it'll constantly heal him for like 8 seconds, which is pretty interesting. It's whenever he uses the skill. It is on a 12-second skill cooldown as well, so every 12 seconds you'll have an 8-second heal. That's actually pretty cool and helps Loki's survivability a lot. On the TVA uniform, it's rather different, and it's much simpler. Instead of giving any of that mind control stuff, he has a very simple guaranteed crit rate 25% alongside the 30% increase of energy attacks. So just by reading the skills out loud and analyzing the difference between the two uniforms, it looks like the TVA uniform is kind of focused on PvE content, while the President uniform is kind of made to succeed for PvP content. Regarding skill rotations, what's kind of worked for me is 3 cancel 5 cancel 4 or 5 cancel 3 cancel 4. For me, it hasn't really made much of a difference, but thankfully between the two uniforms, the skill rotations remain mostly the same on both uniforms. The 3 and the 5 can be cancelled, and you know, you generally want to land it on the 4th skill. Now, there are differences between their 4th skills. With the President Loki uniform, on his 4th skill, it's kind of like a V-pad skill, you can kind of move around, which isn't the case for the TVA uniform, but it's just a very minor difference and doesn't really affect your skill rotation whatsoever. I'm a little bit more unsure of the skill rotation with the tier 3 skill. What I've been doing is I've been doing 3 cancel 5 cancel 4 into the tier 3 skill, but I'm not sure if the tier 3 skill is cancelable at any point really. I haven't done enough testing to kind of see what the best source of damage is for Loki in that sense, so don't take my word on that necessarily, but I'm just putting it here. These are the rotations that I'm following. These are the rotations that have been working for me as of less than 24 hours after purchasing these two uniforms. But so yeah, as you can see in the run here, and you know, this is basically what I've been trying to say this whole video, Loki is pretty damn strong, and he is strong with both uniforms, which is great. I don't really take characters into stage 5 because this is higher than the average performance that I do whenever I clear Knull. Again, I have Moonstone who can regularly clear stage 7 for me, so that's kind of the highest, that's the peak of my roster right now, and Loki's kinda near that with just a 140 damage proc. I don't even know the heights he can reach if I gave him a Rage or a CTP of energy, which I am thinking about doing, like I said. Now look, he's cutting it really close here. It's like 30 seconds, but 30 seconds is all you need anyway to beat Knull in this last phase, and he has his tier 3 skill ready. You know, I'm betting on Loki here. Absolutely. It's not as if I already recorded this content and I know how it ends, so so you know. But jokes aside, Loki's performance in World Boss Legend is really good, and I think I'm very happy with having purchased this uniform, and I'm also just ready to invest in Loki much more. Oh, and I totally cleared the stage of Knull, by the way. We don't need to finish this. Yeah, absolutely not. Okay, for most players, I would recommend picking up the President Loki uniform. It's just more versatile. It has more tools that you can use. It's better for World Boss Ultimate and puts up decent numbers for World Boss Legend and ABX and stuff like that. And if Loki will ever have any PvP presence, it will be with the President uniform. This is in addition to the fact that I think the President Loki uniform just offers a more comfortable style of play. You'll take less damage with it, you'll get more heals with it, it's just more comfy. It's less of a headache to play President Loki is what I'm saying. However, if you know that you want to use Loki for PvE content, if you want him to be a World Boss Legend character, if you want him for ABX mainly, if you want to get the best out of him in that sense, then I'd say go for the TVA uniform. Because I think, even if it doesn't have as much on paper, I think it just overall hits harder in those content. You can't really scoff at 25% guaranteed crit rate, right? And especially if you're gonna give Loki a CTB of Rage, it's definitely the TVA Loki uniform. That's what I would recommend. However, in the end, you can also just pick whichever one you think looks nicer, because the differences between them aren't really that great. And I think that is kind of disappointing when it comes to knowing that these two are like synergy uniforms. The fact that they're kinda interchangeable in a sense is a little bit sad. Like with the Black Widow uniforms, one was clearly better for PvP, one was clearly better for PvE, and I thought that was really cool. It incentivized players to get both uniforms. However, in this one, it's kind of like, you can kind of get away with just getting one. You don't lose out that much on missing out on the other. That's probably the more disappointing part of the uniforms for me, but I am pretty happy with these uniforms. Again, MCU shill over here. I am once again happy with another MCU uniform. The power level I think is pretty good. In that sense, I got the value for my crystals, and I also get to play with this Tom Hiddleston looking fella. I mean, he's not exactly Tom Hiddleston, but you know what I mean. It is kind of weird that they gave a uniform specifically for one version of Loki that shows up for like a minute at most in the whole series, but it's okay. I don't really mind. Overall, I'm just pretty happy with this uniform, and it's a uniform I can recommend. It's a good purchase, I would say. Loki's one solid universal villain that hits really hard. What more could you ask for? So yeah, what are your thoughts on Loki? Did you purchase any of these uniforms? Which of these synergy uniforms would you recommend for players? Do you like the President one more? Do you like the TVA one more? Am I wrong on my take on, MCU Loki uniform? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it kind of highlighted just how good these two Loki uniforms are. And as always, thank you so much for watching.